The Obscura had come without warning. One day, the galaxy had basked in the glory of its stars, and the next, it seemed as though those stars had simply disappeared. It was as though a cosmic hand had snuffed them out, one by one. Ships, planets, entire star systems vanished into the dark expanse of nothingness, and no one could understand why. For weeks, humanity's sensors detected nothing but the void. No signals, no life signs, just a creeping absence that spread across the galaxy like a disease. Star after star, swallowed whole by the ominous energy field. The fleets of the United Terran Federation, UTF, once unmatched in their dominance, found themselves helpless. No technology could pierce the suffocating barrier of darkness. The Obscura had taken away humanity's light, leaving nothing but the cold grip of fear. Admiral Vance Calloway stood before a massive star map aboard the flagship Dauntless, watching helplessly as red markers blinked out across the map. Each red dot represented a colony or fleet that had fallen silent. No distress signals, no survivors. "We're losing everything," muttered Captain Eliza Hunt, his second in command. Her eyes were tired, red-rimmed from sleepless nights spent analyzing the data. "The Obscura is spreading faster than we can track it. At this rate, Earth will be next." Calloway stared at the screen, his mind racing. The Dauntless was humanity's last flagship, and it was being slowly surrounded by the dark tide. He had seen his fair share of wars, but nothing like this. His jaw tightened as he clenched his fists at his sides. It felt as though the universe itself was turning its back on them. "Have we made contact with any other fleets?" Calloway asked, his voice steady despite the panic simmering beneath. He knew the answer before it was given. His officers would have informed him the moment anything changed. "No," Hunt replied grimly. "They're gone. The Olympus, the Relentless, the Pursuer, all of them. Not even Debris. It's like they were erased." Erased. The word echoed in Calloway's mind. What kind of enemy could wield such power? What kind of force could extinguish entire fleets as easily as snuffing out a candle? The answer was terrifying, an enemy unlike any humanity had faced. The room fell into silence, the weight of the situation pressing down on them all. The Dauntless was alone now, at the center of the storm. Calloway's mind went back to the early reports, disjointed and unreliable, but one fact had been constant. The Obscura wasn't just a force of nature. It was intelligent. It was alive somehow. "Sir," Lieutenant Malik Tanaka's voice broke through the silence. He was stationed at the communications console, his face pale as he stared at his screen. "We've received an encrypted transmission. It's from one of the outer colonies. They're asking for help." Calloway's heart skipped a beat, a glimmer of hope, a sign that not all was lost. "Patch it through." The screen flickered before coming to life, showing a grainy image of a woman, her face gaunt, eyes wide with panic. "This is Commander Kira Morrow of the outlying colony Helios. We've been attacked. The Obscura is coming for us. It's too much. We don't know how much longer we can hold out. Please, someone, anyone, send help." Her voice trembled, and then the transmission was lost. Calloway stood frozen for a moment, his mind reeling. Morrow's words echoed in his head. "The Obscura is coming for us." "Get me Dr. Marathorn," Calloway ordered sharply. He turned to Hunt. "Prepare the fleet. We leave for Helios within the hour." As the officers moved to execute their orders, Calloway gazed out the viewport of the Dauntless. The cold blackness of space stretched endlessly before him, but now there was something more, something that gnawed at him. The Obscura wasn't just an enemy. It was a harbinger, and it was bringing with it an end that humanity was not ready to face. But Vance Calloway had never been the type to give up. Not when everything was on the line. Not when humanity's very survival was at stake. The galaxy might be in darkness, but as long as humanity still had breath, Calloway would fight to make it shine again. Set course for Helios, he said, his voice resolute. We're not going down without a fight. And so the journey into the unknown began. The Dauntless surged forward through the silent void, its engines roaring as the sleek warship cut through space, making its way to the Helios colony. The stars, once brilliant beacons, were now distant memories, their light smothered by the encroaching obscura. Calloway stood at the command deck, his gaze fixed on the screen, watching as the galaxy he'd known faded into nothingness. ETA to Helios in 3 hours, sir, Captain Hunt reported, her voice as steely as ever despite the dire circumstances. Good. Let's make it 2, Calloway said, his voice taut with urgency. Every minute spent in the dark was a minute lost. His mind replayed Commander Morrow's words over and over. We don't know how much longer we can hold out. The terror in her voice was impossible to ignore. Humanity's struggle was reaching its breaking point. Lieutenant Tanaka, any sign of the Obscura advancing? Calloway asked, though he already knew the answer. The communications officer's face remained grim as he scrolled through endless data streams. No indication, sir. We're still in the clear for now, but Helios is deep within the field's reach. They're reporting erratic energy fluctuations, almost like pulses within the Obscura itself. Pulses? Hunt raised an eyebrow. What kind of pulses? That's the strange part, Tanaka replied, his fingers flying over the console. The pulses are unlike anything we've seen. We believe they're artificial, not just an anomaly in the field. It's almost as though someone, is controlling the energy flow. Calloway frowned. Artificial? Like a weapon? Possibly, Tanaka responded, uncertainty creeping into his voice. But we don't have enough data to confirm it yet. The pulses are irregular, but they do seem to have a pattern. Pattern, Calloway repeated, his mind racing. If there was a pattern, there was a possibility of a weakness. And if there was a weakness, humanity might just have a chance. Set a course to the last known coordinates of the Helios transmission, Calloway ordered. Prepare a team for immediate deployment. We need to find out what's causing these pulses. As the ship sped toward Helios, the crew worked feverishly, every moment feeling like it could be their last. Calloway couldn't help but feel the weight of the galaxy's fate pressing down on him. The battle for survival had begun, and the enemy was already in position, waiting for humanity to make its move. Hours later, the Dauntless dropped out of warp near Helios, the small colony now barely visible through the encroaching obscura. The planet's surface was darkened, and scattered flashes of strange light flickered in the atmosphere, like the ghostly remnants of a forgotten battle. The colony's communication systems were offline, and all attempts to hail them were met with static. We've lost contact, sir, Tanaka confirmed, his face tense. There's no response from Helios. We go in regardless, Calloway said, his voice hard with determination. Prepare the strike team. We land in 5. On the surface of Helios, the team would find no signs of life at first. The colony, once a bustling hub of human ingenuity, lay abandoned, its infrastructure shattered and overrun with alien debris. The pulses of light, growing ever stronger, seemed to pulse from deep within the colony's central power plant. As the team disembarked and made their way toward the power plant, the air was thick with the scent of burned metal and decaying machinery. Calloway's team advanced cautiously, weapons drawn, the sound of their boots echoing in the eerie stillness. They knew they were walking into a trap, but there was no choice. The fate of humanity hinged on what they could discover here. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shuddered. The pulse of light intensified, blinding them for a moment as it washed over the landscape. Calloway's hand shot up instinctively, shielding his eyes. What the hell was that? Hunt demanded, her voice barely audible over the deep, humming sound that reverberated through the air. Before anyone could respond, the pulse became a wave, crashing outward in all directions. The team's equipment shorted out in an instant, and the hum grew louder, a constant drone in their ears. Then, from the shadows, figures emerged, tall, dark forms with eyes that glowed with an unnatural intensity. The Nehilum. A whisper of horror rippled through Calloway's crew as the first of the alien beings stepped into the light. They were not what the Terran Federation had expected. The Nehilum were not creatures of flesh and bone, but shadows, their forms shifting and undulating like liquid darkness. Their eyes, glowing with malevolent energy, locked onto the humans with a predatory hunger. Calloway's heart raced. These were the beings responsible for the Obscura. They weren't just conquerors, they were extinction itself. "Fall back," he ordered, voice sharp with urgency. But as his team moved to retreat, the Nehilum surged forward. The pulse of energy became a physical force, pushing against the humans with terrifying strength. The team fought valiantly, but the aliens were everywhere, faster, stronger, and seemingly unstoppable. In the chaos, Calloway caught sight of something. A device hidden beneath the ruins of a collapsed building. It pulsed with the same energy as the Obscura, its purpose unclear, but its importance undeniable. "We need to destroy that device," Calloway shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. The team rushed toward it, but the Nehilum closed in, blocking their path. The tension was unbearable as the humans and aliens collided in a final desperate confrontation. Just as Calloway reached the device, one of the Nehilum lunged at him, its dark tendrils swirling with blinding speed. "Now," Calloway shouted. With a surge of energy, the device activated, unleashing a burst of light that sent the Nehilum recoiling. But as the light flickered and dimmed, Calloway realized one chilling fact: this was only the beginning. The Obscura had a purpose, and humanity had just unwittingly walked into its heart. The stakes have been raised, and the war is only beginning. As Calloway's team escapes the clutches of the Nehilum, they're left with more questions than answers. What is the true purpose of the Obscura? And how much darkness will humanity have to endure before they can see the light again? The Dauntless broke free from the gravitational pull of Helios, its crew battered but alive. Calloway stood on the command deck, hands clenched tightly behind his back, staring out into the oppressive darkness of space. His team had barely escaped with their lives, and though they had destroyed the Nehilum device, the battle felt hollow. The Obscura was still there, still creeping outward, and the alien forces were only growing stronger. Dr. Mara Thorne, the ship's leading astrophysicist, had spent the past few hours analyzing data collected from the ruins of Helios. She sat hunched over at a terminal, her brow furrowed in concentration. Her once pristine lab coat was now stained with grime and sweat from the mission. "Admiral," she called out, her voice steady but tinged with something darker. "I think I've found something. The Obscura, it's not just a weapon. It's more like a seed, a parasite. It's feeding off the energy of entire star systems, using their light to grow." Calloway turned, his expression sharp. "Feeding off energy? That sounds like some kind of alien bioweapon." "Exactly," Thorne replied, tapping her screen to bring up a series of data points. "But it's not just biological, it's ancient, very ancient. What we're seeing here is a remnant of a war that predates human civilization by thousands of years." "Can you be more specific?" Calloway asked, trying to suppress the growing anxiety gnawing at him. Thorne hesitated for a moment, then continued. "The Obscura appears to be a relic of a galactic conflict, a war between an ancient race of beings and the Nehilum. But there's something strange. The Nehilum were never the aggressors in that war. They were the victims." "What do you mean, victims?" Calloway asked, his brow furrowing in disbelief. "The Nehilum are the ones wiping out entire civilizations. How could they be victims?" "It's complicated," Thorne said, her voice trailing off. "From what I can gather, the Nehilum's original homeworld was destroyed by a force they couldn't control. The Obscura was created as a last-ditch effort to escape the consuming energy of this war. But it backfired. Instead of offering salvation, it became a weapon, one that drained and consumed everything in its path. The Nihilum, in an effort to survive, became its servants. So they became slaves to the Obscura, Calloway said, his voice darkening. No wonder they're trying to destroy us. We're their last obstacle. Precisely, Thorne confirmed. The Nihilum know that humanity poses a threat to the Obscura. We're one of the last races capable of fighting back. The problem is, the more they feed off our energy, the more their power grows. And if they succeed in harnessing the full potential of the Obscura, there won't be anything left to stop them. Calloway's mind raced. The stakes were higher than he had imagined. This wasn't just about humanity's survival anymore. It was about preventing a galaxy-wide extinction, a chain reaction that would consume everything, including the stars themselves. We need to stop them, Calloway said firmly, his voice resolute. But how? We don't even know where they're getting their power from. Every time we destroy one of their devices, another one pops up. We're being pushed back at every turn. Thorne stared at the screen, her fingers tapping absent-mindedly as she ran through a series of complex equations. There's one thing I do know. The Obscura isn't just a mindless force. It's being controlled, but by who? That's the real question. Whoever is behind the Nihilum's resurrection, they've been manipulating the Obscura for centuries. A heavy silence fell over the room. Calloway's thoughts drifted to the distant past, to the mythologies and legends of long-forgotten wars that had shaped humanity's history. What if those old stories weren't myths? What if there were forces at play, powers beyond human comprehension, that had long since faded from memory? Maybe we've been looking at this all wrong, Calloway said, his voice quiet but certain. The Nihilum aren't just invaders. They're part of a bigger puzzle. We need to understand or what, is behind them. If we're going to have any chance at surviving this, we have to find the root of the Obscura. Tanaka, who had been quietly monitoring the ship's systems, spoke up. Sir, I found something. A signal buried deep within the Obscura. It's old, and I mean ancient, but it's definitely coming from the heart of the Nihilum fleet. Where is it coming from? Calloway demanded. An uncharted system. It's not far from here. It might be the key to everything, the source of their power. Calloway turned to Thorne, his mind already working through the logistics. If this signal was what they thought it was, it could lead them straight to the heart of the Nihilum's operations. Prepare the fleet, Calloway said. We're going to that system. And when we find this source, we're going to end this war. Once and for all. As the Dauntless charted its course toward the unknown, the weight of their mission hung heavy in the air. Calloway knew this was their last chance. With the Obscura continuing to expand and the Nihilum growing stronger by the day, humanity's hope for survival rested on their ability to uncover the dark secrets of the past and destroy them before they consumed everything. They were about to face their greatest battle, one that could determine whether the galaxy would ever see the light again. The mystery deepens, and the tension rises as Calloway's team prepares to uncover the truth behind the Nihilum's power. With each new discovery, the path ahead grows darker and more dangerous, but there's no turning back now. The Dauntless cut through the vast expanse of space, its engines humming steadily as the ship followed the signal's trajectory. The uncharted system they were heading to was located on the far edge of known space, beyond any established galactic trade routes or military presence. It was a place where even the most seasoned explorers dared not venture, but now it was their only hope. Calloway stood at the helm, watching the stars blur past, each moment bringing them closer to their objective. The weight of the mission pressed heavily on him. His mind kept returning to the haunting idea that they might be walking straight into a trap, but there was no alternative. The galaxy was dying and humanity's time was running out. Dr. Thorne paced restlessly behind him, her eyes glued to the data streams on her tablet. She had been quiet for hours, lost in the depths of her analysis. Admiral, she finally spoke, her voice a little too calm for the situation. I've been running simulations based on the data we've gathered from Helios and the Nehilim's pulse patterns. It's not just a weapon we're dealing with, it's a network. The Obscura is connected to a vast system of energy conduits buried deep within the galaxy. Calloway turned toward her, his brow furrowed. A network? Are you saying the Obscura is alive? Like a superorganism? I don't think it's alive in the way we understand, Thorne replied. But it's functioning as a unified system, like a neural network or a hive mind. And its core, what's controlling the Nehilim, is located at the center of this uncharted system. That's where the signal is coming from. That's where everything started. Tanaka, who had been monitoring the ship's sensors, looked up. Sir, we're entering the system now. The signal source is just ahead, but there's a strange fluctuation in the readings. Something's interfering with our sensors. Damn it, Calloway muttered. What kind of interference? We can't tell yet, but it's like a distortion in space itself. Almost as if the fabric of reality is being warped. I've never seen anything like it. Prepare for anything, Calloway ordered. This could be the heart of the Obscura. We don't know what we're walking into. As the ship plunged deeper into the system, a strange stillness seemed to take hold. The stars faded, their light eaten up by an overwhelming, oppressive darkness. There was no trace of the usual cosmic radiation or stellar remnants. Just an endless void, as if the very concept of light had been erased. We're approaching the signal's origin, Tanaka said, his voice tight with tension. I'm detecting a massive structure. It's not like anything we've seen before. It looks like a dark energy anomaly, almost as if it's been built into the fabric of space itself. Thorne's voice came next, low and deliberate. It's a weapon, Calloway. Whatever this thing is, it's not natural. The Nehilim didn't just discover this place, they were drawn to it. This is their source of power. Can we destroy it? Calloway asked, his gaze locked on the view screen. I don't know. The structure's energy field is unlike anything we've encountered. It's not bound by the normal laws of physics. Whatever's inside, it's beyond us. But if the Obscura is feeding off it, then destroying the structure might destroy the entire network. A chill ran through the room. This was it, the final confrontation. They had come here to end the nightmare, but the odds were impossibly high. We'll need a plan, Calloway said, turning to Hunt. Prepare a strike team. We'll infiltrate the structure, find out what's inside, and do everything we can to disrupt it. As Hunt began coordinating the preparations, Calloway felt his chest tighten. There was no turning back now. The Nehilim had been waiting for them, and it seemed their worst fears had been realized. The weapon they sought to destroy was more than just a tool of conquest. It was a force beyond comprehension, and humanity was about to face it head-on. Moments later, the Dauntless hovered just outside the massive structure. It was as though they had entered another dimension entirely. The anomaly stretched out before them, an enormous, twisting mass of dark energy that defied all logic. It pulsed with a steady rhythm, like a heartbeat, sending waves of distortion through space. Steady, Calloway said, his voice firm but tinged with uncertainty. We're going in. The strike team, clad in heavy combat armor, boarded a shuttle that would carry them to the heart of the structure. The shuttle shook violently as they entered the field of distortion, and for a brief moment, Calloway wondered if they would make it at all. The energy surrounding the anomaly seemed to pull at them, bending time and space itself. I've never felt anything like this, Hunt said, her voice strained as she gripped the shuttle's controls. It's like we're being pulled apart. Don't stop, Calloway ordered. We have to get in. The shuttle broke through the energy barrier, and they were plunged into darkness. What lay before them was a labyrinth of corridors, flickering with strange lights and resonating with a low, unnerving hum. The walls seemed to pulse, as if alive, responding to their every movement. This place is wrong, Tanaka said, his voice shaky. It's not just an alien structure. It's like a trap. And then, from the depths of the darkness, a voice echoed in their minds. A voice not heard through their comms, but felt like a cold presence in their very thoughts. Welcome, humans. You've come to the heart of the end. The eerie voice reverberated through the minds of Calloway and his team, cold and unfeeling, like the whisper of something ancient and incomprehensible. It was not a voice in the traditional sense. It was a presence, an imprint left upon their thoughts, creeping into their consciousness with unsettling ease. Welcome, humans. You've come to the heart of the end. For a moment, none of them moved. The air inside the structure seemed to shift, growing heavier, as if the walls themselves were aware of their intrusion. Calloway's pulse quickened, his mind scrambling to process the enormity of what they had just encountered. This wasn't just a weapon. This was a force, a consciousness, older than anything they had ever known. A presence that could control the Nihilum, that could twist reality itself. "Who's there?" Calloway demanded, his voice harsh in the oppressive silence. "What are you?" "We are the last children," the voice answered, a ripple of coldness sweeping through their minds. "Born of the Obscura, bound to its endless hunger. We are the beginning and the end. The power you seek to destroy is the force that sustains us." Calloway clenched his fists, frustration building. "You're not a god. You're a parasite, a weapon. We are beyond your comprehension, human," the voice hissed, its tone mocking. "You cannot stop what has already begun. The Obscura cycle is inevitable. You are merely the latest to stand before its hunger." The team's weapons hummed as they instinctively raced them, but Calloway held up a hand. "Hold fire. We need to understand what we're dealing with." The voice continued, its words growing colder, more piercing. "The Nihilum serve us, as all creatures must eventually serve. They were born from the remnants of a lost war, their minds shattered by the hunger. We have reshaped them, given them purpose, and they will lead the galaxy to its end." Calloway's mind raced. The Nihilum, the dark energy, the Obscura, it all made sense now. They weren't simply invaders, they were victims, twisted by this force, driven to destroy and consume. The structure they stood in seemed to pulse with malevolent energy, its walls breathing, alive with the strange force that emanated from it. It was both a ship and a living being, a twisted amalgamation of machine and biology, all connected to the Obscura. And yet, there was something more, something buried deeper within this dark heart, waiting to be uncovered. "We can still stop you," Calloway said, his voice unwavering despite the overwhelming presence surrounding them. "You're not invincible. We'll find a way to destroy this thing. We'll find a way to free the Nihilum and end your control over them." "You cannot destroy what is already a part of you," the voice replied, its laugh echoing in their minds. "Your species is as much a part of the Obscura as the Nihilum. You, too, are bound to the cycle. The hunger will consume you as it has consumed all before you." Suddenly, the floor beneath them trembled, and the lights flickered erratically. The walls around them pulsed in a rhythmic pattern, the sound of their beating energy growing louder, like the thrumming of a giant heart. "We need to move," Hunt said urgently, her hand gripping her weapon. "This thing's waking up." Calloway nodded, his eyes scanning the dark labyrinth of corridors. They had come this far, but now it was clear that they were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting for the very soul of the galaxy. They had to shut down whatever system powered this place, whatever consciousness was driving the Obscura. "Let's go," Calloway commanded. "We push forward, we find the core and end this." They pressed on, moving cautiously through the twisting corridors, the air thick with an unsettling energy that seemed to seep into their bones. The structure around them seemed to shift, as though it were alive, constantly changing in response to their presence. The walls writhed with dark veins of energy, pulsating with an almost sickly rhythm. As they ventured deeper into the heart of the structure, the temperature dropped, and a low, guttural sound reverberated from deep within the walls. It was a warning, or perhaps a promise, that whatever they were about to face would be far worse than anything they had encountered. Then they reached it, the core. It stood in the center of a massive chamber, a dark, towering spire that seemed to reach endlessly upward, vanishing into the shadows above. Around it, tendrils of dark energy swirled and coiled, feeding into the very heart of the structure, which pulsed like a living organism. At the base of the spire was a glowing, pulsating mass, a singularity of pure darkness, feeding off the stars, the energy of the galaxy, the light itself. It was the source of the Obscura. Calloway's heart pounded as he stared at the mass of dark energy before him. They had found it, the source of the Nehilim's power, the root of the Obscura's endless hunger, and it was far more powerful than he could have ever imagined. "This is it," Calloway said, his voice barely above a whisper. "This is where we end it." But as he spoke, the shadows around them seemed to stir. A figure stepped forward from the darkness, a figure they had not seen before. It was one of the last children. And it was not alone. The true face of the enemy is revealed, and the stakes rise higher than ever. Calloway's team must now confront not just the dark force that controls the Nehilim, but a deadly new presence, one that will test their resolve like never before. Will they be able to destroy the heart of the Obscura, or will they fall before its unyielding darkness? The figure before them was unlike anything they had ever seen. Its form seemed to shift and pulse with the same dark energy that enveloped the entire structure. A shadow that seemed to absorb light, it towered over the team, a grotesque fusion of organic and mechanical. Its body composed of shifting, metallic tendrils intertwined with glowing veins of obsidian-like material. The air around it was thick with a palpable sense of dread, a stifling weight pressing down on the crew, as though reality itself was warping. Calloway's grip tightened on his rifle. The creature before them exuded a power beyond comprehension, and yet there was something disturbingly familiar about its presence. It was as if it had been waiting for them, watching them approach. "Who are you?" Calloway demanded, his voice steady despite the terror rising in his chest. "What is this thing?" The creature did not speak, but instead, the voice echoed again in their minds, the same cold, malevolent presence they had felt earlier. "We are the last children, the inheritors of the Obscura, born from the shattered remnants of the galaxy's greatest war. You should not have come." Dr. Thorne, who had been silent up until now, stepped forward, her voice trembling with both fear and determination. "You're the source of it all. You control the Nehilim. You—" She paused, her eyes scanning the creature. "You're not just a weapon. You're the culmination of a war. But you're not a god. You're a tool, a mistake." The creature's form shuddered, as if it was responding to her words. "We were not a mistake. We are the inevitable result of your kind's existence. The Obscura was created to consume, to reshape. We are the end of all things. The Obscura is the only truth. Your world will fall as all others have." "Your hunger doesn't end with us," Calloway said, his voice growing firm. "We're not going to let it. Humanity will fight. We will survive. We've made it through worse, and we'll make it through this." The creature's shadowy figure loomed closer, its form twisting as though it was feeding off Calloway's defiance. "Your species is nothing more than a fleeting spark in the vast darkness of the universe. You are doomed to fail, just as all others have failed before you. The Obscura will claim you, and the cycle will continue." With a sudden motion, the last child's tendrils shot out, faster than the eye could follow, and the team braced themselves. But before they could react, the air around them crackled with an unseen force. The energy field around the creature shimmered and vibrated violently as a blast of raw dark energy surged toward them, knocking them off their feet. Calloway barely managed to roll to the side, the blast singing his uniform and scorching the walls behind him. Hunt and Tanaka were already on the move, weapons raised, but the creature was faster. Another wave of energy, more intense than before, slammed into the team, throwing them backward with bone-shattering force. "This thing, it's too powerful," Hunt gasped, struggling to rise. "We can't fight it directly." "Then we need to shut it down," Calloway said, pulling himself up and shaking off the dizziness. "We have to destroy the core. It's the only way to stop the Obscura." Thorn stepped forward, her face pale but determined. "The core is feeding directly into the structure's power grid. If we can overload the energy conduits, we might be able to destabilize the system. But we'll need to get to the central reactor, and that means we need to get past this thing." The last child loomed over them, its eyes, if they could even be called eyes, burning with an otherworldly glow. The creature didn't speak, but the air around them grew colder, the very temperature of the chamber dropping sharply as it prepared for another strike. "We can't wait around for it to make the next move," Calloway said, taking a deep breath. "We need to push forward." The team scrambled to their feet, weapons raised, moving with precision as they quickly recalibrated their strategy. They had to outsmart this creature, break its control over the Obscura, and destroy the core before the creature could strike again. Calloway led the charge, rushing past the twisted tendrils that whipped toward them, narrowly dodging as they lashed out like vipers. The team followed in close formation, covering one another, each movement deliberate and calculated. They were getting closer to the center of the chamber, where the massive spire of dark energy pulsed with an almost unbearable intensity. As they neared the reactor core, Calloway's heart pounded in his chest. They were running out of time. The creature was relentless, but their only chance lay in reaching the reactor. Once they overloaded the system, it would send a cascading chain reaction throughout the structure, potentially destroying it and halting the Obscura's growth. But the price of failure was unimaginable. If they didn't succeed, everything would be lost. Hunt called out as they neared the core, her voice strained. "We're almost there, but we need to get past this thing first." The last child, now fully aware of their intent, raised its arms, tendrils swirling in a violent maelstrom of energy. A deep, guttural growl echoed through the chamber, and the walls seemed to pulse with anger. "This is it," Calloway shouted, charging toward the core, knowing that his team had no choice but to fight through the storm of energy or risk everything. And with that, the final battle began. The team's path to the reactor is now blocked by the full force of the last children's power. Time is running out, and with each passing second, the odds grow slimmer. Will they be able to overload the core before the creature overwhelms them, or will they fall to the darkness that seeks to consume everything? The chamber exploded with chaos as the last child's tendrils whipped through the air, each strike leaving a trail of crackling dark energy. The team dove for cover, the blast echoing off the walls, the sound deafening. Calloway barely managed to avoid the sharp tendrils, rolling behind a pillar of blackened stone. His heart was pounding, his breath ragged. The core was within reach, but the creature standing between them and the reactor was more powerful than anything they'd ever faced. "Move, move," he shouted, rallying his team. Hunt and Tanaka were already firing, their weapons barely scratching the surface of the last child's dark, almost impenetrable form. The creature's shadowy body rippled and absorbed their attacks, its form flickering as though it could bend and reshape itself with every blow. The energy blasts from their rifles seemed to disappear into the darkness, swallowed by the ever-present void. "We need to disrupt its control," Thorn called out, pulling a small device from her pack. "I've modified this to short-circuit its energy network. If we can hit its core, it should destabilize the energy field." Calloway didn't need to be told twice. "We'll cover you. Just get it done." As Thorn rushed toward the device's target, Calloway and his team split up, moving with precision as the creature lashed out again. Hunt, with her quick reflexes, ducked beneath a sweeping tendril, shooting it point blank. The blast caused a violent ripple in the air, but the last child only seemed to recoil slightly before lashing out even harder. "Not enough," Tanaka muttered, stepping into the line of fire. His rifle's energy beams connected with the tendrils, but like Hunt's shots, they were little more than an annoyance. The creature's form surged with dark energy as it began to actively hunt them down. Calloway's mind raced. The Obscura's control over the creature wasn't physical, it was something far more insidious, a psychic connection that allowed the creature to manipulate space and time itself. They couldn't simply shoot their way through. They had to sever that link, break the creature's bond with the dark core that powered it. "Thorn, are you in position?" Calloway barked as he ducked beneath another blast of raw energy. "I'm almost there," she yelled back, her voice strained. "Just a little longer." As if sensing their desperation, the last child's form twisted into a horrific shape, elongating and splitting into multiple shadowy figures, each moving independently but all connected by the same dark pulse. The teen was surrounded. Calloway's instincts kicked in. "Fall back to the core," he ordered, his voice cutting through the growing noise of battle. "We need to make it to the heart of the reactor. It's our only shot." The team moved as one, racing toward the core's central column, but the last child was relentless. It extended its tendrils in a blinding flash, each whip of dark energy threatening to slice through them. Tanaka and Hunt pushed forward, covering Calloway and Thorn as they neared the central spire. "We need to create a breach," Hunt yelled. "There's too much energy around it." "Work fast, Thorn," Calloway urged. Thorn, her face grim, hurriedly set up the device at the base of the core. The dark energy around them hummed louder, sending a tremor through the chamber. Calloway knew they were running out of time. The last child was upon them now. It surged toward them, an explosion of tendrils and dark energy, but before it could strike, a massive pulse of light erupted from Thorn's device, piercing through the air. The chamber shook violently, the walls groaning as the pulse shattered the energy field that had been holding the creature's form intact. For a moment, everything froze. Then, with a thunderous crack, the last child's form twisted and fragmented. The dark tendrils collapsed, and the shadowy figure seemed to disintegrate, its body evaporating into a swirling mass of dark energy. The room was filled with an unearthly scream, a sound of agony, of something finally being torn apart. But it wasn't over. The destruction of the creature had only served to unravel the delicate balance between the Obscura and its power. The core, now exposed, began to pulse wildly, crackling with dangerous energy. "We've done it," Thorn shouted, her voice filled with a mixture of relief and disbelief. "The control system is destabilized, but we need to overload it, now." Without hesitation, Calloway reached for the detonator that Thorn had attached to the device. "Tanaka, Hunt, cover us," he ordered. The team took up defensive positions, weapons raised, as Calloway hit the button on the detonator. The core began to hum louder, the energy spiraling out of control. The walls of the chamber shook, and the entire structure began to groan, as though it were waking up, rebelling against the interference. The dark energy pulsed in sync with the core, a final, desperate attempt to maintain control. "We have moments before this place goes critical," Thorn shouted. Calloway nodded. The countdown had begun. The Obscura, the very force that had nearly torn the galaxy apart, was dying. They had done it, but now they had to escape. "Move, move, move," Calloway yelled, sprinting toward the exit as the core's energy surged one final time, blasting the chamber with an overwhelming pulse of light. The team was racing against the clock. The heart of the Obscura was collapsing, and they had only moments to escape before the entire structure imploded. Would they make it out in time, or would the destruction they set in motion claim their lives as well? The roar of the collapsing core echoed in their ears as the chamber's walls shook violently. The air was thick with the static hum of unstable energy, the floor beneath them trembling with each passing second. The light from the exposed core bathed the chamber in an eerie, flickering glow, casting long shadows that stretched across the decaying structure. They had made it this far, but now every second counted. "Go!" Calloway barked, pushing his team forward as the countdown continued to tick away. Their exit lay through the same twisting corridors they had navigated earlier, but now they were no longer a safe passage. The structure itself was coming apart, each tremor pushing them closer to a collapsing finality. The walls of the chamber behind them cracked as though they were breaking under the pressure of an invisible hand, pieces of debris falling from the ceiling. The air was growing more oppressive with each step, charged with the dying energy of the Obscura, pulsing in rhythm with the reactor's imminent collapse. "We're almost there," Tanaka shouted, his voice strained. The team pushed forward, navigating the dark, shifting labyrinth of corridors. Their path was fraught with danger, torn metal, collapsing walls, and unstable floor panels, but there was no time to stop. The explosive energy from the core was flooding the entire structure, and they had to outrun the death trap they had set in motion. Behind them, the Obscura's power surged one last time, a massive pulse of dark energy rippling through the walls. A high-pitched shriek, like the sound of tearing metal, filled the air. The final wave of destruction had begun. "Move!" Calloway shouted, shoving a chunk of debris aside. The team was barely ahead of the destruction now, but there was no turning back. The central reactor was destabilizing, and with every passing second, the pulse of energy growing stronger, threatening to overwhelm them. Hunt was the first to break through the final corridor, stumbling into the open air of the ship's exterior, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She turned back to look for the others, her face painted with fear and determination. "Come on," she screamed. "We can't stop now." Calloway followed, his pulse racing. Tanaka and Thorne were right behind him, but the sounds of destruction were closing in. The walls of the ship groaned, buckling under the weight of the collapse as a violent explosion shook the air. They were almost there, just a few meters from the escape hatch. Then, with a deafening crack, the ship's hull gave way, a massive rupture splitting the structure apart. A wave of darkness, of raw, unbridled energy, tore through the corridor. It was as if the very fabric of reality was unraveling in the wake of the Obscura's demise. The ship was disintegrating, the massive core finally giving in to the destruction they had set in motion. Calloway's heart pounded as he threw himself toward the hatch. The team was right behind him, but the shockwave of energy from the collapsing core pushed them forward, nearly knocking them off their feet. "Now," Calloway shouted, slamming his hand against the activation panel. The hatch slammed open just in time, and they were pulled into the escape pod safety. The doors closed with a hiss, sealing them inside as the ship's final moments unfolded in a catastrophic explosion. They were falling through space, the ship behind them consumed in a fiery burst of light, the energy of the dying Obscura tearing apart everything in its wake. The pod's thrusters roared to life, pulling them away from the wreckage, just as the last remnants of the ancient power collapsed in on itself. Inside the pod, the team sat in stunned silence, their bodies bruised and battered, their minds reeling from what they had just witnessed. The mission was over, but the consequences of their actions would ripple throughout the galaxy. They had destroyed the core of the Obscura, ending the Nehelim's reign of terror, but at what cost? The galaxy would never be the same. "We did it," Thorne finally whispered, her voice hoarse. "It's over." But Calloway's eyes were distant, his mind racing. They had won, but the universe, broken and bleeding from the battle, would need more than just one victory. The Obscura was gone, but there would always be more shadows, more forces that sought to twist the universe to their will. The galaxy was still fragile, still on the edge, and humanity, despite everything, had proven it could stand against the dark. "We did," Calloway said, his voice steady, "but this isn't the end. It's only the beginning." As the escape pod drifted into the void of space, carrying the survivors to an uncertain future, a single bright star gleamed in the distance. humanity's last radiance in a universe scared by darkness. The story concludes with humanity's victory over the Obscura, but the journey to reclaim the galaxy has just begun. The seeds of hope have been planted, and with them, the promise that even in the darkest times, humanity's light will always burn brightest.